What's up guys, NinjaNick333, and I completely neglected to look at the bracket during the last game. This is the top 8. Alex Szymanski, Robert Kimbrough, Pedro Eugenio Torres, Aiden Kuss, Tord Reklev, Trevor Reed, Eric Rodriguez, and Pablo Mesa. I know Eric. He's not too far away from me. I want to say he's Connecticut or New York City area, somewhere around there. I've played against him. He's pretty good. I mean, everything else is, like, mostly the same. We've seen, I think, everybody. We probably have seen everybody but Eric on stream at some point. Unfortunately, Eric did lose to Pablo. So we are going to see. It looks like they're just waiting on who's winning out of this. Spoiler alert, it is Tord. But we're going to skip ahead to when we see our next match. So it's Tord versus Pablo and Alex versus Pedro. I'm not sure which one we're doing first. You guys already know. It's in the title. And these are all the decks if you want to see that. I'm blocking Eric's a little bit, but it is Lugia Archeops as they list it. Both of the Lugia decks that are in, so both Trevor and Eric both have Duraludon in their single strike Lugia lists. Then we have Pedro with Tord with his Gardevoir. We have Aiden Kuss with Goodra. We have Robert Kimbrough. We already saw last round with Miraidon. Alex Szymanski with Arcdura with the Vulpix tech. And then we have Pablo with just straight Muvimax. Alright, so it looks like we are doing Alex versus Pedro first. You see Alex has 4 finalists on here. That is very important to note. He's never actually won a large tournament. Meanwhile, Pedro has 3 championships under his belt here that's on there, along with a world's top 4. Pedro probably has more wins than that, but those are like all the most recent ones, most likely. But again, we do have the Arceus V-Star, Duraludon V-Max, Alolan Vulpix V-Star double Drapion deck versus Pedro with Lost Box. Just pretty standard, just Lost Box. I don't really particularly like his version of Lost Box compared to some of the others that we did see come out of this tournament. But they are, I mean, it's still good. I mean, Pedro's really good of a player, so of course he's earned his spot here. And they are still shuffling up. Can we just get right into the game, please? As always, guys, do not forget to comment, like, and subscribe because it is important to the YouTube algorithm. And it looks like there may have been one mulligan here from Alex's side. That does happen with Arceus decks a bunch, it does seem like. I don't know why. And we do see the Sharon's Care is prized. That could actually really matter in the Lost Box matchup here. Because you do use that to pick up and effectively heal your Arceus V-Stars. And these Lost Box decks do tend to do a lot of just spread damage with Sableye, and that can kind of counteract that. So we are going to see the Duraludon V get benched. Probably the best attacker after Arceus in this matchup. It looks like we're thinking about a second Duraludon being benched as well, but we are going to hold it for now. It is just, you know, the most HP attacker in the deck. So, pretty fine having that. It's just a little unfortunate that Hyper Potion did rotate. So now there is no way to heal Duraludon very easily. You could, like, Cheryl, but then how are you going to get 3 energy back on it? So Alex's turn, not too super relevant, just got a double turbo energy onto his Arceus V-Star. And they're just trying to decide where the Lost Zone is going, I guess. Pedro is playing the Charizard box. This is probably the strongest version of Lost Box, I guess, but I don't like it, personally. That's all I gotta say. My friend got second at a league challenge with it yesterday. So we are going to go for Nest Ball. We already have one Comfey in play. We've already used the Flower Selecting to get rid of that one Lost Vacuum. So we're probably going to get either Radiant Greninja or another Comfey. I don't see any energy in hand, so we might just go for the Comfey. Hopefully we do have a switching card in there because I couldn't really tell. Pedro is also going to deck search a little bit more just to make sure he knows what's in his prize cards, what's most relevant. I would say probably check your energy counts in this deck. We already have Charizard in hand, so we know that that's available. Check your supporters as well. Supporters in Lost Box are a little bit relevant because you only play usually 2 Clara. So if you have to Lost Zone one, you know, maybe that was your only copy in deck because you prized the other. The Pokemon usually aren't too relevant besides, like, you know, Radiant Greninja or Charizard. And I like how I said just a second ago that maybe he wanted to go for Radiant Greninja, but he's playing the Charizard version. He does not have Radiant Greninja in his deck. You can only play 1 Radiant Pokemon in the deck whatsoever. So we are going to use the Beach Court. I do like that Pedro does put the marker on the Beach Court to show that he's retreated for the turn. It would be cool to, you know, some people do play like supporter used markers. I always like my ability used markers myself. But like, what's it? Oh yeah, supporter used and retreat are what people will sometimes have markers for that they'll flip. I don't think it's that necessary. You should be able to remember whether or not you've retreated or used your supporter for turn. They're only once per turn actions. Same with attaching an energy for turn. But people will still somehow forget. I do forget sometimes, but like very rarely. Although I suppose the deck I usually forget the most with is Lost Box. Because you can attach so many energies for free with Mirage Gates, and you can switch so many times with switch carts and stuff that you forget whether or not you've actually used your retreat and energy attachment. So I could see that. Just a Pokegear for a Raihan. Unfortunately, not a Chorus's Experiment. We would have liked to see that instead. He does have the Miltank in hand as well. That's really good against things like Miraidon. It just kind of auto-wins you that matchup. Or actually, no, it doesn't. Because the EX doesn't. The EX goes through it. It is good against Duraludon, because the Duraludon can't... Or no, the Duraludon shreds through it. What is the Miltank for again? I forgot. My friend Chris just told me yesterday. I mean, there's still a lot of V attackers in the format, let's be real. There is the Arceus V-Star. It's good against that. But yeah, Duraludon's attack actually has like a shred effect, so it will go through Miltank. It ignores Miltank's ability when it does damage. We do see a switch. Do we get the evolution? Looks like, no. Looks like we do not have an out to getting the V-Star here. Already used 1 Chorus's Experiment this turn as a supporter. We have another one, but we can only use 1 supporter a turn. So it looks like we're actually going to go for the attack with the Arceus V instead of charging energy. Which I do kind of like to see, actually. You want to race the prize cards from your opponent here. Definitely put the Drapion in there. That is not useful at all in this matchup. It's only really good against Mew and sometimes Gardevoir, because you can double Mirage Gate to it and knock out a Gardevoir EX or a Zacian, or not the Zacian V. I think I said that in another video. That's a big oopsie. But yeah, you can knock out the Gardevoir EX for weakness with the Drapion. Also the Mewtwo V Union if they're playing that version. You can knock that out as well. Take 3 prize cards even. That's fun. Just like you can against Mew. There are some versions of Lost Box that also play that Sky Seal Stone as well. So you can take that nice 4 prize turn against Mew to win the game after you've taken your first 2 prize cards. Usually with Sableye on a Genesect. And then your opponent can never Roxanne you. Drapion's just such a good card, especially with Sky Seal Stone. So we are going to use Flower Selecting here. We do get rid of a Clara, but Pedro is aware that he does have access to another one in deck, so safe to discard that. And we are going to just hit with the Cramorant to try to two-shot this Duraludon V. A little unfortunate that the metal one did rotate, so we do have to play the Dragon type basic V now for Duraludon. It's not as good. It doesn't have the ability that reduces damage that it takes. So it does take the full damage while it's unevolved here. So we do get the Arceus V-Star off of this Colress's Experiment, and another Colress's Experiment we get as well. Looks like we are going to Lost Zone Ultra Ball, Choice Belt. Those aren't super relevant right now, so that's perfectly fine. We do have Duraludon VMAXs in hand, I think, but after this first one got damaged, I don't think that we want to do that. I don't think we want to evolve that one. So we are going to Star Birth here. Going to grab ourselves two cards from our deck. He moved the Water Energy to the front, which I find a bit odd. Is he taking? He's taking that. Why is he taking the Water Energy? What does that do for him? He would attach... That's only good for the Vulpix, and I guess another Arceus. And he is going to be attacking with... Oh! Because with Beach Cord, it has 1 retreat. I keep thinking that this thing has a 3 retreat cost, but no, it has a 2 retreat cost. So he gets the energy so that he can retreat the Duraludon under Beach Court, and then can just go ahead and attack with the Arceus. Gets Metal Fighting onto the fresh Duraludon he just benched, and puts a Fighting onto the damaged one, just in case he has to attack with that at some point. Duraludon only needs 1 Fighting Energy on it to attack. It does need the double Metal. So, by getting that Fighting Energy on the other one, you are fulfilling that Fighting cost. There are less Fighting Energies in the deck than there are Metal. So, you're more consistently going to be able to get Metal Energies onto that guy by hard attaching. So, that's why you choose the Fighting. We are going to see Colress's Experiment from Pedro. Kind of funny that Alex was only 1 card behind in the Lost Zone, and he's not playing a Lost Zone deck. Pedro does have that really cool Hawlucha, the new replacement for the Galarian Zigzagoon that just rotated. Galarian Zigzagoon can put 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon when it's put on the bench. Hawlucha can put 1 damage counter to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, but they do have to be on the bench. And that's when you bench the Hawlucha. So these guys have pretty high HP, so 1 damage counter on each of these 2 Duraludon isn't going to make too much of a difference. Feels pretty safe to Lost Zone that. We are going to see the Escape Rope is going to bring up that fresh Duraludon. We're going to use our second flower selecting here, getting rid of the Battle VIP Pass. I don't think Pedro's going to be getting a lot of use out of that Miltank because of the fact that we have 2 Duraludons squaring up with it right now. You do see a retreat into Miltank and pass, so that is what you would want to retreat into if Alex doesn't have the evolution and just has to attack with the regular Duraludon. It won't be doing anything, but he does have the evolution in hand. We already knew that. He had that in his opening hand, I believe. He also has double Drapion in hand, which is completely useless. It would be nice if he could put those on the top of his deck and then Lost Zone them with the Colress's Experiment. But unfortunately, that's not how the cards work. Yeah, so he's deciding whether he wants to Colress's Experiment or Judge. Pedro does have quite a few cards in hand, but Alex can make his hand a lot better this way. He does Lost Zone the 1/1 Vulpix line that he finds off of that, which is pretty great. You don't want to use that at all in this matchup, so that's fine. You just play it like a regular Arceus Duraludon deck. And then you take the knockout there on the Miltank because you do shred through the ability. We are also one more prize card away from finding our Sharon's Care, so if that Arceus does get damaged, we can always scoop it back up. Although the plan might be to go in with double Duraludon VMAX, which would be the 6 prizes Pedro needs to win anyway. So I don't know if that'll end up mattering. It could just negate one of Pedro's attacks, which feels fine. I think you'd rather just let it get knocked out at that point. Unless you can power up another Arceus while letting that Arceus get damaged. But I don't know if there's enough basic energy left in deck. These games in Top Cut do have an extended timer as well. You can see they still have 62.5 minutes left on the clock. Normally these games start with 50 minutes, but in the Top Cut, most tournament organizers do decide to go for 75 minutes because they can. It's within the rules and a lot more fair. And sometimes these games still do go to time. Unfortunately, more frequently than you would like to see them. So Pedro has a lot of options in hand, but I'm not sure that he knows what he's going for yet. Does retreat into the other Comfey, flower selecting yet again. I think you can get rid of the Hisuian Heavy Ball at this point, right? Yeah, that's fine. That puts us up at 10 cards in the Lost Zone. We don't have to keep track anymore. We know that Sableye will be able to attack. And we do see the Pokegear here is going to look at the top 7, find a supporter card, and add it to Pedro's hand. So, might be looking for Colress's Experiment. There's a Roxanne. That can be played even this turn, so long as a supporter hasn't already been played. Although he's got a big hand, I don't know if he wants to shuffle that in right now. He's thinking about benching the Charizard. He can go for that right now. If Alex has a boss's orders, he'll want, yeah, and he does move the boss's orders immediately to the front there. He knows that Charizard is the most threatening thing in Pedro's deck, so he wants to be able to remove that as soon as possible. Looks like we also see the Pidgeot V get benched. That's usually for 2 reasons. One is for a Pokemon to put your Forest Seal Stone on, so that you can immediately remove the Pokemon V from your board afterwards. And the other reason is Pedro also plays, I believe he plays Mawile, which can lock your opponent's Pokemon active, makes it so it can't retreat. So you can, if your deck is bigger than your opponent's, even if it's not, you can use Mawile to lock a Pokemon that can't retreat into the active. Pokemon usually with like no energy, can't attack, something like the Duraludon V that's on the bench with the 1 fighting energy. You could lock that in the active, and then every time you draw a Pidgeot V, you just shuffle it back into the deck. So eventually you have a 1-card deck that's Pidgeot V, you draw it, you bench it, you shuffle it back into the deck, and you can never deck out while your opponent does eventually deck out. So it gives you just an alternate win condition with Lost Box. Looks like Pedro does understand at this point that he has lost the game. There is no real win condition for him here, so he does scoop it up, and we will go straight into the next game. So Alex is up 1-0 versus Pedro here. So let us get right into the next game. Looks like we do both have a basic Pokemon after shuffling. We were able to actually cut right to where we needed to be this time, which is perfect. Doesn't always happen with YouTube. 2 Escape Rope prize is a little weird. Also a Colress's Experiment. There's an Arceus V-Star, a Duraludon V. We did see that Alex did get a lot of use out of his Duraludons in this matchup because of their high HP on the VMAX, so by prizing one of those basic Duraludons is a little bit awkward for him because he may have to go in with other attackers, but he does have access to the Sharon's Care a lot earlier in this game. So he might be able to replace one of the Duraludons with an additional Arceus, and then Sharon's Carrot back up into his hand at one point. to negate some of the damage that Pedro has done and give him more than enough time to get into the second Duraludon as well. So this game is looking like, at least for the prize cards, that Alex is a little bit more favored since he does have the Sharon's Care in deck. But again, we'll have to see. Pedro does go first. He does get the Battle VIP pass. Or I believe as it's put in his language, I'm pretty sure it says like Passe de Combat VIP or something. It's really hard to see. I saw it in one of the earlier rounds. Someone's Battle VIP pass said Combat on it, and I'm like, wow, that seems like a really dark thing for Pokemon to have on their card. Combat? Like, Battle just seems like something fun, but Combat seems like you're going into a war zone. Like, yeah, when I think of Combat, I like straight up think of like people beating the crap out of each other, or like straight up being in a war zone getting shot. Like, ugh. But other cultures use words differently sometimes, so maybe it's a little more lighthearted in other countries. So we do see Comfey's Flower Selecting is going to Lost Zone one of the top 2 cards of the deck and put the other one in the hand. Looks like I saw an Escape Rope and, was it Pokegear? Yep, gonna Lost Zone the Pokegear, keep the Escape Rope. That way he could switch into the other Comfey if he needs to. He is also keeping a good count of that Lost Zone right there. There is one. It would also be funny if Alex just played one Cramorant just because he's playing so many Chorus's Experiment in his deck. That would be pretty funny. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's already tried that, like in a Duraludon deck where they're playing Chorus's Experiment, just, you know, playing one of those Cramorants just because we've been a one prize attacker at some point. We're going to get double Cramorant onto the bench from Pedro here. We use both our Flower Selectings. Don't even have a Chorus's Experiment in hand for next turn. Can't play it this turn because it is first turn, but not quite sure what you're going to do next turn unless your Flower Selecting is pretty good next turn. So we do get the immediate Nest Ball here from Alex. Does start the Radiant Greninja. I almost said Greninja, then I almost said Giratina. The Radiant Gardevoir. It's like one of my favorite Pokemon. I can't say the name right. So that is a pretty good start. If you can't start Arceus, that is the next best start. Gets another Nest Ball to get down the only Duraludon V that's in deck. We do have access to both of the Duraludon V Max, so we shouldn't have a hard time getting into that, especially if we have access to Starbirth on the next turn. I haven't seen Alex's hand yet, so I'd like to see how strong it is, if maybe he has a double turbo and a switch. We do see the double turbo to the Arceus, never punished, never missing anything. And it looks like a Judge as well. I would have loved to see the Research instead, just because Pedro had a dead hand. But Alex, of course, does not know that. So, if only he knew what we knew, if we could beam the information into his mind. So both players are shuffling their hands into their deck. They're both going to draw 4 cards because of the Judge. I wonder how many times you've been at a Pokemon tournament and they say, I'm going to play Judge. And then the tournament judge comes over and is like, I heard Judge. What do you need? Draws 4 cards. Looks like there is a broken sleeve. Alex is going to replace the sleeve with the good one from one of his cards in the discard pile, just because it's already used, and he'll fix it maybe between matches. Yeah, if this goes to game 3, he'll need to definitely replace it between games. There's no way to get the item cards back into your deck in this format currently. Nothing along the lines of, like, Junk Hunt, I think, right now. Or at least nothing in his deck that has something like that. So no need to worry about the broken sleeve as long as it's in your discard pile. But it would be better to replace it immediately. But sometimes when you're on the stage, you don't actually have access to your backpack, so maybe your sleeves are still in your backpack. And you have to, like, ask a judge to bring you your stuff. It's like a whole ordeal. They also just, like, leave it, like, on the floor for anybody to just walk by and take. That's not being, like, watched by anybody. So if I was on stream and they didn't let me have my backpack, like, under the table, I would be super stressed out. Just because I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And sometimes you'll be playing against an opponent in Yu-Gi-Oh! And they'll quite literally reach under the table, like pretend they dropped a card, reach under the table and just grab deck boxes out of your backpack and put them in theirs. And if you catch them, they're just like, oh, sorry, my mistake. I thought that was my bag. And they'll put it back. And there's no punishment for that. They don't care about that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is why Pokemon is the better game to play. So it looks like we are eyeing up Research and Switch. So we are going to grab the Arceus V-Star with this Ultra Ball. Going to put that on the one that has the double turbo energy on it. And then we are going to grab 2 cards from our deck. Do we even have a hand? Guess not. So we grabbed Switch and Research, right? So we're going to switch into the Arceus and then hope to draw into an energy. So definitely still the correct play from Alex. Otherwise, if he just grabbed the energy, he would then have no options in his hand for next turn besides whatever he got off the prize cards. So it's better to risk not drawing the energy than to guarantee it and then not have anything for next turn. So here it is. Alex does get the Trinity Nova. Is going to do 180 damage to that measly Cramorant, blow it into smithereens. The judgment of our mighty god Arceus himself will blow you up and then proceed to just put a bunch of energy on Pokemon in play. Those energy coming onto that Duraludon like, bless you, my child. You ever see the meme where it's like the Omanite, because everybody loved Twitch Plays Pokemon, and the Omanite is like touching like Professor Oak's hand or whatever, and it just says, bless you, my child, as the caption. I love that meme. Oh, he just gave away the nest ball to the judge so that the sleeve can be replaced. I just saw it cross the table. Yep, and now he just put it back. Awesome. So that sleeve must have been replaced. I'm pretty sure that's what that was that happened there. And Pedro's got a pretty dead hand here. Looks like he's going to attach a Fire Energy to his Comfey to retreat it into the other Comfey to use Flower Selecting yet again to go to 6 cards in the Lost Zone. We're going to need to see Colress's Experiment, but we don't see it. We're just going to Lost Zone and Drapion yet again like we did in Game 1. We have 6 cards in the Lost Zone, but nothing going on in hand here. We have a Pidgeot we could just shuffle into the deck. We have a Clara we could just get back energies, I guess. But yeah, since you're not playing Radiant Greninja, you can't Nest Ball for that and then draw more cards by discarding an energy, which is why I like playing Greninja in Lost Box a lot more than playing Charizard. And it looks like we are just going to go with the Clara for the, oh man, for the Cramorant and 2 energies. And what, are you just going to pass from there? Because there's no switch cards. Looks like attaching to the Comfey, but he already attached this turn. Which feels pretty obvious. You just did it. You just attached to the Comfey, retreated, Flower Selecting Clara for the energy back. Yeah, so I don't know how, I don't know how you forget that. So we just see another Trinity Nova is just going to finish loading up these two Pokemon on the bench. And again, we are going 2 Arceus, 1 Duraludon this game. And as long as we see a the Sharon's Care at some point, we can just recycle one of those Arceuses and make it so the opponent has to go through 2 Arceus V-Stars and the Duraludon. Of course, they could always just Sableye to the Radiant Gardevoir and make it a little bit less of a, a little bit more of a mute point there. But we are going Colress's Experiment, Lost Zoning, Fog Crystal, Lost Vacuum. So we are at 8 in the Lost Zone now, so we can play Mirage Gate if we have access to that. If we're even playing that in this deck. I'm pretty sure I saw one in his hand earlier. Because you could always Mirage Gate to a Radiant Charizard. Wouldn't be that bad of an idea. You don't have Choice Belt in this deck usually, so you'd have to finish off the Arceus with a Sableye. Yeah, and Pedro's really struggling to find a way out of this right now. He's at 9 cards in the Lost Zone, so he can't attack with Sableye yet. He's 1 card off. And since he Lost Zone to that Lost Vacuum, he still can't even just use that to be able to get the Sableye attack off. Because you could go 3 to each of the Arceus, and then finish off the Gardevoir to take the prize, and then put the rest on the Duraludon VMAX, and that wouldn't be bad. Looks like we are going to go for the Retreat of the Comfey into the Miltank, which is not a really good wall because Alex can just retreat the Arceus into the Duraludon VMAX and shred through it. We're also going to see a Psychic Energy get attached to the Comfey, which is a little bit surprising, but we do have 2 more Psychic Energies in hand, so I guess might as well do it that way. Your opponent gets less value out of knocking out a Sableye if there is a boss's orders. And we are seeing the boss's orders come out, so that is going to bring up the Sableye. We already saw 1 Clara get played. So going to make it the least likely that Pedro will be able to follow up with the Sableye on the next turn when he is able to get to 10 cards in the Lost Zone. Yeah, it looks like we also attach a Water Energy to the Radiant Gardevoir. And then play a Lost City to Lost Zone the Sableye. So that actually does put Pedro at 10 cards in the Lost Zone, but he was going to use Comfey either way this turn. Oh, it looks like he top decks Roxanne. That's really good for him here, but unfortunately, Alex doesn't need cards in hand at this point in the game. He just needs to take 3 prize cards, and he has 3 Pokemon in play to be able to do just that. So Pedro hasn't gotten enough good attacks off within the time frame that he needed. He really needs a Sableye attack here this turn. But it looks like the one Sableye did go to Lost Zone. Maybe the other one's in prize cards. I didn't notice that for him or not. But we are going to go for the Nest Ball onto the Comfey. It was good that he ended up attaching that energy to the now active Comfey because... Ooh, here's a Colress's Experiment. Yeah, so now he has a way to retreat, even though the Beach Court did get replaced by the Lost City on the last turn. So Pedro could Roxanne here, or he could Colress's Experiment. He does also have the Mawile. He could potentially use Mawile, bring up the Radiant Gardevoir, and lock it active and go for the Pidgeot Mill strategy. We do know that Alex has already used 1 switch card. He would need to have another switch card in order to get out of it. Alex should have an escape rope, I would think. We do see the Forest Seal Stone coming out here. on the Pidgeot that was just benched, so we can look through our deck and grab any one card. Looks like we are going to go for the boss's orders. So Pedro is going for the mill strategy here, because that's pretty much all that is available to him at this point. We are going to shuffle Pidgeot back into the deck, because we do not want to have a prize liability there on the bench. Now, what Alex can do is he can boss up something. Maybe the Miltank. I think the Miltank has 2 retreat. I can't remember. I gotta look this up. This is important. Yeah, it has 2 retreat. So if I'm Alex, I boss up the Miltank and then hope my opponent doesn't have a switch card. Because he does have the boss in hand, and that would potentially break Mawile's Tempting Trap lock. Looks like he's going to go for Colress's Experiment to try to stack more cards in his hand. Doing that first might be a little bit better, because you're not really in a rush to move the Gardevoir, and you could always just keep draw passing if you know that you have another switch card in deck. You could always just continue draw passing until you finally get it. Because what's your opponent going to do? If they break their Tempting Trap, they're just going to have to find a way to knock out those 3 full HP benched Pokemon, or at least the VMAX and the one of the V-Stars. If there was some way he could just one-shot the Duraludon VMAX, then he could just win the game off the back of Miltank, because Alex could never attack into the Miltank. Unless he set up another Duraludon, but he doesn't have the ability to do that. Too much of his energy is in play right now. I mean, maybe he could, but I don't think he has enough energy left. We do see a Fire Energy go down to the Miltank, and we see Tempting Trap. Alex just goes Draw Pass. He just looks at the card and then passes. So, yeah, I do believe that Alex is pretty confident that he has an out to it in his deck, and doesn't mind taking the time to just draw pass into it. If he really has to try to get out of this, he can just waste a boss's orders. But the energy did go down to the Miltank. Pedro knows that bossing up the Miltank was a potential out to the Tempting Trap, so that's why he did attach to the Miltank more so than being able to attack with the Miltank. We do also see the Beach Court come out. So now the Miltank does actually have 1 retreat. Tempting Trap yet again. Alex just draws and passes. Now, Pedro's only way to reduce Alex's hand is the Roxanne, but that's going against his type of mill strategy. We do see the Escape Rope come out here. So Alex is going to boss back up the Mawile and knock it out, putting it in the Lost Zone with Lost City. And knock this Mawile out with the... Oh my god. And if we were only playing Psychic Energy in this deck, we could actually attack with Gardevoir here. If we had the Psychic Energy instead of the Water Energy. That would be fun. So we do see Pidgeot V comes back down with an energy attached to it. And Alex is like, I have to read this card. Yeah, I honestly don't know what the attack with Pidgeot does do. Looks like he's just passing. He's using it as a wall. He just wants to be able to retreat it back next turn. And yeah, Alex just retreats into the Duraludon and takes a one-shot. And that is it. Yeah, Pedro was just hoping to buy a turn by, like, Alex not realizing that he could retreat. But yeah, that was, again, a pretty decent, clear win from Alex's side. He's just got a really solid deck for this tournament. As always, guys, do not forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Feed that YouTube algorithm. He is always hungry. because this helps other people see these videos just like you just did. We will see you guys next time for the next top 4 match between Tord and Pablo.